They just shoot people for nothing.
My own brother is a police officer, but I don't still trust them.
I was being beaten and locked up in the cell for an unjust reason.
Well, I've been beaten on my back with wires before. I have scars.
The ongoing conversation about the way police in the United States treat black people has opened a similar conversation in Africa. For many Africans, the fear of dying at the hands of a police officer resonates. Police all over the continent often use violent and even lethal force on unarmed civilians. There's a general distrust of police across Africa. So we sent out our reporters to ask people to tell us, in their own words, why they fear police.
Because they dealt with me mercilessly, and I feel they should work on themselves because they cannot continue doing all that they are doing.
They just shoot people for nothing.
It doesn't matter where you are, how you're dressed out, what you're doing. They can take you anyhow without even listening to what you're doing or what you're going to tell them.
Just last week here in Lagos, I was being beaten and locked up in the cell for an unjust reason. And because of my hair, just seeing me, they called me an internet fraudster.
Police are so scary because they always like intimidating people. They love beating people. They love torturing.
Because on several occasions, of course, I've been apprehended and handled not very well. I've been beaten on my back with wires before. I have scars.
My family, I have a lot of policemen and women in it. Even my own brother is a police officer, but I don't still trust them because whereby I've seen a lot of cases whereby I think police officers need to defend people, the masses you were trained to protect. We see them, hurt them.
Okay, so the voices of people there. There are no concrete numbers to make solid comparisons on, but there are patterns that we can point to. In Nigeria, for example, human rights groups have documented numerous cases of forced disappearances and torture. In South Africa, the police watchdog registered 42,000 complaints between 2012 and 2019, including accusations of rape and torture. And then in Kenya, police have already killed around 100 people this year. Many other civilians have been killed in extrajudicial killings over the years. In Zimbabwe, police are known for their brutality, especially when citizens show dissent against the government. Our correspondent, Privileged Mushanyiri, reports from Harare.
Police violently dispersing an opposition demonstration in Harare in August 2019. This is how most, if not all, protests end in Zimbabwe. But this image, captured at a demonstration in 2016, shook the nation. It was not the excessive force by police that alarmed people, but the fact that even an elderly woman would not be spared. The victim of this assault, Lillian Chinyerere, was 62 years old at the time. She later sued police and won, but she still harbors deep resentment.
I hate the police deeply. I hate them even without doing anything and talking to me. I do not even want them to come close to me, even if they are my relative. I am deeply pained by what they did to me. A police officer must protect me, not to assault me with a baton stick and kicking me with a boot.
Sadist. In 2007, these images of Zimbabwe's late opposition leader stunned the world. This is what Morgan Tsvangirai looked like after spending days in police custody. He and other party members had been arrested and detained for attempting to gather for a prayer meeting. Human rights activists say the state is responsible for police brutality in Zimbabwe.
We have so many George Floyds in Zimbabwe. A lot of people who are screaming and shouting that they can't breathe because a boot is on their neck. Their hands are to the ground, are stuck to the ground, and they can't move. The challenge that we face is the conflation between the ruling party and the state. And that means that institutions of the state are actually fighting wars on behalf of the ruling party, rather than to be out there to protect citizens.
There's been a spate of abductions and kidnappings in the country. State actors are suspected to be involved. But the state denies any wrongdoing, instead accusing the alleged victims of making false allegations.
Government wishes to state categorically that it does not engage in or permit any of its agencies and institutions to use such methods as torture, forced disappearance, or abductions. As a matter of fact, these terms are alien to our culture and way of doing things. And we believe they are extrapolated from foreign environments where they are rife in order to generate negative sentiments against our government.
On average, 50 complaints against police are brought before the courts every year. But it is believed that many could go unreported because victims do not feel safe to do so. One human rights lawyer that I spoke to said police in Zimbabwe need to change their approach.
The first important thing that needs to be put in place is to comply with the constitutional provisions and operationalize the independent complaints mechanism that is provided for in terms of section 210 of the Constitution. But also we need to go further in terms of training our police, human rights training of our police, and also rights-based crowd control, which I think is key when it comes to training, so that police are able to handle with the crowds who are involved in protests, so that some of these complaints that we now hear, they will then be dealt with.
Citizens such as Lillian Chinyerere remain fearful of police. The sentiments are those charged to protect them have become tormentors.
Well, from Zimbabwe, we'll go to Kenya, where rights groups are demanding an end to extrajudicial killings. Activists say police have killed many innocent young men from poor neighborhoods, and all in the name of fighting crime. Our correspondent, Sela Oneko, spoke to the family of one victim in Nairobi.
It's been 3 years since Lucy Wamboy's husband, Mike, was killed. 3 years since her life was turned upside down. She still keeps his shoes, clothes, and his work overalls.
If I hadn't buried Mike, I wouldn't believe he's dead. It's like he just went somewhere and he's coming back.
When Mike died, Wamboy was 9 months pregnant. It all happened in broad daylight. 2 plainclothes police officers came to the Pirates Community Center where Mike was working. Here, in Nairobi's informal settlement of Mathare, one of the 2 officers, Ahmed Rashid, is known for committing execution-style killings under the pretext of fighting crime.
Rashid told him that we are not going to kill you, we are just going to talk and you'll be back. They went from Pirates to a place called Wanjas, and it's a footpath. So that's where they shot him and killed him. After killing him, they planted a gun, a knife, and a motorbike.
Wamboy says that one of the officers later told the family that they had mistaken Mike for somebody else. Shortly after the funeral, Wamboy gave birth.
It was hard for me because I didn't know I was the first-time mother. I didn't know what to do with the baby. I didn't know how I'll adjust being alone.
Wamboy, however, managed to raise their daughter and opened a shop to support herself. With the help of a social justice center, she also reported Mike's case to Kenya's policing watchdog. But the post-mortem was lost and one of the witnesses was killed. Mike's case is not an isolated one. Since the start of the year, local human rights groups say they have documented 27 deaths and disappearances, while the independent policing watchdog says it has received 15 cases. The youngest victim was a 13-year-old boy, one of the few cases in which the officer in question is facing charges.
The people who have come here today are activists and family members of people who have died at the hands of police. They've come here today to bring a petition to their local MP and ask him to discuss it in Parliament.
While many attempts to lobby politicians for their cause have failed, Wamboya and other women have formed a network of mothers and survivors who share their experiences. Their encounter with the justice system and the police, however, have left many of them feeling even more vulnerable.
We are helpless because we don't have money. They have money, so they can do anything to us.
They intimidate us. If a policeman can say to my face that he killed my son and that they have their sights on my other son, I'm very scared. After all, they pass through this neighborhood all the time. While the families of those who died continue to seek justice, for the people here in Madare, protecting their boys and young men, both from crime and the threat of the police, remains a constant struggle.
Now, in a moment, I'll be talking to an expert about why policing in Africa is not being done right. But first, have a listen to our reporter in Nigeria about recent developments there.
Police brutality is rampant here in Nigeria. Human rights activists document an increase in the abuse by police. There are civilians who have been tortured, extorted, and killed by the police officers over the years. These cases have seen people across the country protest for action from authorities. Amnesty International has recently released a report accusing the anti-robbery unit of the police of torture and extrajudicial killings. The reports also point out the failure of the government to prosecute, saying it gives police officers impunity.
Human Rights Watch has researched police violence and brutality in Africa. My guest today is the Executive Director of the organization's Africa Division, Mauzi Shagun, joins me from Abuja. Good to see you, Mauzi. Is there something about the way policing institutions are structured and run in Africa that make them more of state enforcers rather than institutions of law and order in the interest of public safety?
I mean, I think we have to draw the trajectory from the history of how policing evolved in Africa. A lot of it in most countries in Africa grew out of the sense of policing the unruly natives or indigents or by the white minority colonial masters. And that sense of policing in terms of function and in terms of tactics has been sustained over the years. Even until now, you have, police as an institution that is basically set up in the way it functions to maintain the status quo or to maintain the political or ruling class in power. And that sense means that the police is not able to function the way that the law envisages it to function. So there is the legal aspect and there is the factual aspect. The law is that police should serve the community that it seeks to protect human lives and property. But in the sense that we see it in reality is that police protects the ruling class and suppresses and represses the public or the people who are not part of the ruling class.
Mauzi, to the point you're making then, are you saying that there needs to be more distance, that police need to be more independent from the governments then?
By law, the independence is supposed to exist, so you have all kinds of structures and reforms that have taken place over the years to ensure that in terms of the legal framework for setting up policing, that distance exists. But in reality, it is far from that. It is a mindset, it's an attitudinal problem in the way that the police, envisages the way that it operates between the ruling class and the rest of the population. It's the way that the ruling class expects the police to function, and that has created a distrust. I think that it's beyond just reforming the law or the way the institutional framework is set up. It has to be that we reimagine from the beginning, from its genesis, the idea of policing. what do we really want the police to do? What does law enforcement really mean in actual terms?
And I guess the point that you're making about the relationship or the close proximity that police have to the governments, this also creates the atmosphere of impunity. Many people have made cases against police in Africa. Those cases are never really heard. So does that also speak to the impunity that police seemingly have?
The impunity is a huge part of the problem. The lack of accountability for police abuses and violations of the law is a huge reason why there is distrust, and lack of cooperation with police, individual policemen and the police as an institution. That distrust and lack of cooperation means that, one, crimes go unpunished, even ordinary crimes by ordinary people go unpunished. But it also means that the police is forced, and I use that word, advisedly, forced to adopt tactics that are abusive, including torture, mass arrest, because they are underfunded themselves and they are undermanned. So when the resources aren't there, the police would adopt whatever tactics they think, would aid them in carrying out their duties. That means that the authorities also lack the moral authority to hold the police accountable when violations and abuses happen. This is what we've been working on for too many years.
I mean, as you were speaking, I just remember that some people actually go as far as saying that our police on the continent have been militarized. I wondered if that's how you would describe it. But beyond that, Mausi, what would or should an ideal police service look like for us on the continent? Many of us don't have that ideal police officer in our minds. These are people that we have come to fear.
The police has come to see itself, the phrase that is usually used to describe or name the police is police force. It sees itself more as a fighting force than as a law enforcement and peace and order maintaining institution. I think, one, the word force has to be taken out of it, because, the use of force is one of the reasons why violations and abuses occur when police, adopt these tactics in engaging with the public. There is also the sense of community policing. Community policing, the way that it's the concept has been established outside of Africa, can be an option, but here in Africa, community policing basically means vigilantism. And that in itself, is a major platform for human rights violations, when people in the community who have no training, who have no accountability, for whose actions there are no accountability, are engaging in community. What the police needs to look like for the ordinary people is for the police and seeing itself as a civilian institution that works for the people and with the people, building trust and collaboration, first of all, to prevent crime from happening, so that the people would habitually, live in conformity with the law. That will reduce the need for a huge police force, for a militarized police force that sees itself as against the people who are considered the enemy that needs to be, suppressed and repressed.
All right, that's Mausi Shegun from Human Rights Watch speaking to us from Abuja. Thank you. I'm interested to hear your views on this topic. So if you're watching this online, write in the comments section. You can find DW News on Facebook and on Twitter. And if you want to talk personally, my handle on Twitter is @Mundwa7.